Alright, so here's our test print. It's a calibration cube, 20 millimeters on the side. It's called an XYZ cube because X, Y, and Z are engraved into the surface. So that's a nice little test. Doesn't take very long. So I have a link to this in the show notes. This is available for free on Thingiverse. So this is the project I've used on the Dreamer NX. You can see the print bed size is this size. So we need to modify this for the Guider II. So to do that, we need to go to the G-code tab. And the print bed size for the Guider II is 280 in the X direction, 250 in the Y direction, and 300 in the Z direction. And we also need to change these origin offsets for X and Y to halfway across. So for X it's going to be 140, which is half of 280. And for Y it's going to be 125, which is half of 250. For Z, just leave this alone. Now for our test print, we're going to be using PETG because we want to print a reel holder. So we're going to maybe start using PETG. So we'll change the bed temperature to 65. That's what we use on the Dreamer NX. And then this particular PETG, we have had good luck extruding at 237. And since the print head is basically the same as the NX, it's more advanced, but it's basically got the same temperature parameters. So just do that, and then for cooling with PETG, usually we do the first 3 layers with no cooling, and then we put it on 10%. If you don't use any cooling at all, you have remelting problems. That's been my experience. So sometimes I do 5%. It just depends on the project. For this, 10% should work. And sometimes I go maybe the second layer. Just depends how well the first few layers are adhering to each other. So for layer height, we're just using 0.2, which is the default. And for extruder, usually now I'm using auto for this, which changes to 0.48. But for this project, since I've printed this before, I'm just going to leave it at 0.4, which is the nozzle diameter. Okay, so as you see, when I change the machine parameters, now the print bed is the size of the Guider II. So now let's see how long it's going to take to print. So 28 minutes. This is a nice test print because it only takes 28 minutes, or probably maybe 30 minutes, because Simplify 3D, we're using version 4.1.2. It underestimates the time by about 10%, 10 to 15%. Now, version 5 of Simplify 3D is released by the time this video comes out. But for this, we don't really need to use that. And I have some videos coming out about that later. But for this, we're just going to use version 4. They can coexist side by side. All right, so we'll just save this G-code to a SIM card so we can use it inside the Guider II.
All right, so I don't know how well this is going to work, but I uncoiled some coils from this reel here, and then we're going to put it up through the thing here. Yeah. Up through here, there's a little cone here that feeds it in, so that goes in really smoothly, so that's good. So I think the diameter of this is probably easily more than this. I'm going to take this side off so you can see it coming out. It's easily more than the 1.75 millimeters. It's not really designed to be a tight fit, which is fine. All right, so now we got some coming out of this side. So now we're going to feed it through. All right, so we're going to feed this through, so we'll pull some more through. And then we, as usual, with the NX, we just depress this button and get this into where the gears are. Hopefully it'll go in there. Now it's engaged, yeah. And then we'll put this, well, we'll just make sure it's going in first. We can push on it from here, then we can seat this afterwards. Now, one thing that's different about this is, on the NX, you can move this printhead to the side, and then the filament comes out and doesn't land on the print bed. On this one, the printhead is constrained to the print bed, so you cannot extrude filament unless it lands on the print bed, which is kind of a pain, really. It'd be nice if it in the front or something could go far enough that it would not go onto the print bed. But unfortunately, that's not true. So when you're loading filament, you're going to have to pick a spot somewhere. And also, we're going to want to run the... I don't want to home it. I want to go manual. I pressed the wrong button there. I want to go plus, yeah. So we need to make sure there's enough room here so we can get filament come out and we can grab it with our tweezers. So, okay, so we moved it down enough so we can see it. Now we'll go ahead and feed the filament in and watch it come out. So, all right, so we're going to load the filament. What was it doing? Oh, I guess it automatically moves it down. Hopefully not all the way to the bottom. Oh man. Okay. So that's kind of a pain. That's all the way to the bottom before we can load filament. Which sort of makes sense. You want to make sure there's enough room for the filament to come out, but you know, this is plenty far enough to get at the filament. But so some of this startup before these prints is going to take a lot longer than the NX, because on the NX, you know, because of the Z-axis was so loose, you know, you could just push it down with your finger. You didn't have to use the motor even. So, oh well, it's just another learning process here.
Tweezers. Okay. All right, so now we're ready to do our test print. Let's see how our preheat's doing. It's going back up now. Yeah, so it went down to 220. We let our preheat get up to 237 again, and then we'll. So I'll have to look that up on the internet, see if that's a bug. That maybe there's a new firmware. I just bought this printer, so it seems like the firmware should be up to date. But so I'll go ahead and finish the feed tube. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to, since it's PTG, we're going to print with the top on. So the top goes on like this. These little ears that go underneath. Feed tube goes up to this little slot there. That's all okay. Unwind some more of this so it can come out. Alright, so we're back up to 237. So now we're going to stop this. And we're going to say build. And we're going to put our SIM card. So we were doing the calibration cube. So we'll say build. Copy the file to its hard drive, I guess. Not resume file. Okay, I'm not resuming. This is supposed to take about 27 minutes, so we'll see if that's true. Okay, so now it is moving up a little quicker now. It didn't lose much temperature when it loaded the file, so that's good. I didn't turn off the preheat. On the NX, I found occasionally if I didn't turn off preheat before I printed, it just wouldn't print. So I'm just going to try leaving the preheat on this one and see what it does. Okay, so now it's going and then it's doing its wipe move, which I programmed in. You can see that on the other part of the video. So doing a wipe move along the front, which is not the default. It's getting a nice clean bead of filament there. Now this printed bed is long, like I said on the video, that I didn't bother to go all the way across with my wipe move. Alright, so it looks like it's doing the calibration cube, so we'll go ahead and put on the time lapse and see how it turns out. Let's check around the back here. So our jerry-rigged filament loading system worked okay. It got a little tangled up here, but this isn't enough friction to cause any problems. So this should work for what we need it to do. And then once we're done printing, we'll have a spool holder we can just attach on the back here. Then we don't have to deal with that anymore. So let's go ahead and see how our calibration cube worked. It did send the print
bed to the bottom to 0, which I think I set the script to put it to like 100 or something. Maybe I messed that up. So, because when I remove stuff, I don't want to go all the way down here. Although, yeah, because then it has to come all the way back up again. So we're going to use our usual spatula, and there's a link to this in the show notes. So we'll go ahead and take this wipe move off. Now, as I mentioned in the other video, the original wipe move went from 0, 0, which is back here, kind of at an angle to the front, which is weird. So that was the default script for Simplify 3D for this printer. So luckily I spotted that, and I went ahead and fixed that before we started. So we did a wipe move across the front, which is what we want. So go ahead and try to take this calibration cube off. Okay, so there's a lot of residual PTG on the bottom here, so that's not great. So to get this off, we're going to have to heat this up a lot higher and get this off. So that's kind of disappointing. I don't know if it'll really affect our spool holder, because this will be on the edges of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and print this as it is. And but first we'll heat the bed up to like 120, and so we can scrape this off easily. I could scrape it off just using the scraper, but it's going to take a long time and it's going to scratch the print bed, so I don't really want to do that. It's only up to 112, but I've shown on my other videos, once you get it up hot enough, the PTG will start melting, and then you can scrape it off cleanly without scratching the print surface. So for PLA, you only need to go up about 80 or so, and you do the same thing. So the more you scratch this up, the more adhesion issues you have eventually in the future. So that came out pretty clean. There's still some residual they have to get off. This is over 100 degrees C. I don't want to touch it with my hand, obviously. Get that off. Okay, so that's clean now. And how to set the filament load and unload temperature. On some of the other Flashforge printers like the Dreamer NX, the preheat temperature is used for both the preheating the print head and also setting the temperature for load and unload. Let's get this started. Of the filament, which makes sense because you're preheating it, so why wouldn't you want to use the unload the filament at the same temperature? But on the Guider II, there's a separate temperature that you have to set. So if when I go to filament page, there's this little indicator up in the upper left-hand corner here, and you actually can tap that, and it brings up a separate temperature to set. So that's, I guess it's more flexible, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So when we're ready to unload and load the filament, we just need to set this temperature before we do it. The other thing that happens is, on the Dreamer, it would remember at least the last preheat temperature that you set for both the extruder and the bed, the platform. But on the Guider II, at least with the 1.53 firmware, it doesn't remember. It always defaults back to 220 and 50 degrees. So to set those each time when you start up, it's not a big deal, but it would be more convenient if it remembered and those two temperatures were the same.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Post a comment if you have any questions or ideas, and I'll try to respond. That's all for now, but more videos are coming, and if you want to see them, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification icon if you don't want to miss one. This is Beta Cygni signing out, and keep looking up.